The way that Villa are seemingly tiptoeing around this PSR and FFP stuff is absolutely wild.
And to all the comments on the last podcast I did saying, why'd you call him Western? You don't know him. You don't know shit, okay? Let me tell you that. Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Boy, it feels good to say that after what feels like a really long 2 or 3 weeks out of the saddle. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, first of all, shout out to you for holding the fort down while I was away. Second of all, a lot has happened, mate. A lot has happened. And we're going to, I think first of all, we should sort of retread over this Douglas Luiz to Juve deal. Because the landscape has changed since you filled the viewers and listeners in. And we're stuck in this really weird limbo because swap deals are like notoriously hard, as you've already explained, to do when there's just one player involved, let alone two. And we reached a bit of a stumbling block the other day, didn't we, mate, in regards to Weston McKennie?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, mate. It's a really interesting one. Before we get into it, yeah, good to be back. It is good to be back, mate. Good to have you back. Apologise to the viewers, but yeah, not having as much content as usual. But it's just been a crazy time for the two of us. But yeah, hopefully back on UK soil for a little bit now for you, mate, at least. Then we can get our teeth into some of this stuff. It's probably easier to look at what hasn't happened over the last 2 weeks rather than what has. There's just so much to talk about. But yeah, I mean, it looks like, and to be honest with you, it looks like a very complex situation that I'm not even going to attempt to butcher. But it looks like there's been some issues on Weston McKennie's side, whereby there's some, like, you know, he believes he's entitled to some kind of financial compensation for kind of Juventus, like you know, getting him off the books earlier than his contract. It looks like there's all kind of stuff that is holding this up on his end, a bunch of admin, legal, financial stuff that I'm not even going to try and explain. Maybe you know a little bit more than I do, mate. But it still looks like the deal is going to go ahead in some form, but it may not be Weston McKennie that comes the other way. There's been a couple of other players touted and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, can I say this quietly? I think he may actually end up in Villa getting a better deal. I know that generally the fan base hasn't been too hot on Weston McKennie. I know he's someone that you and I have both been very keen on. I think he's a player that you can look at in two very different lights. I think Weston McKennie joining the current Villa squad and bolstering our current list of midfield options, great. Weston McKennie coming in as a potential replacement for someone like Douglas Luiz, like less hot on that one. And so there's, you know, Samuel Iling-Junior is still a really exciting prospect. But yeah, it looks like there could be a couple of new midfielders on the card that maybe are a bit easier to get off the books for you.
Yeah, it's a frustrating. I think my understanding of the McKennie situation is he's currently on around 50 to 53,000 euros a week. There was in episodes that we've both done sort of prior, we've explained the sort of ongoing contract feud that he seems to be in with Juve, where they've offered him a new deal. His deal expires in 18 months, but they've offered him a significantly lower weekly wage, which, I mean, a Juventus player to be on 50,000 a week does seem quite low in itself. So Weston quite rightfully sort of felt insulted by that and wants to make sure he's paid what he's worth. From what I've read, reports were sort of suggesting he's looking around the 80,000 mark, which, you know, wouldn't put him as one of our top earners, but would, you know, almost effectively double his current salary. And yeah, as you said, mate, he sort of wants this financial compensation, which I don't think is unfair, considering the move was being almost thrust upon him. Like, this wasn't a transfer for Weston. Yeah. This was a deal. This was like a deal sweetener, something to sort of cook the books, if you will. So it's a bit, I don't know. I mean, people who've listened to the podcast before, mate, will know my stance on Weston. I think he's an incredibly talented player. And to all the comments on the last podcast I did saying, why'd you call him Weston? You don't know him. You don't know shit, Okay, let me tell you that, because last summer I worked with Weston, so I'm going to call him by his first name. So fuck you.
Damn right.
So yeah, I'm going to call him Weston. But I think I must caveat that with I know nothing about this actual deal because I don't actually know him. I think but I'm not in the know. If I was in the know, you guys would know. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, and yeah, I think you're right. Barrenechea coming in, he's had a really interesting season. Obviously out on loan at Frosinone, I believe, from Juventus. He's played in the Juve first team before. Profile-wise, very different to what Weston would sort of bring to the table. And if you look at all the sort of numbers, underlying numbers, blocks, clearances, aerials 1.5 blocks per 90, 1.95 clearances per 90, and 1.63 aerials 1 per 90. It all sort of suggests he's going to do this sort of dirtier work, which, in all honesty, isn't really what Weston is capable of doing. I think is maybe fair to say, mate. So we're getting a different player, and as you alluded to, I think this is a better deal.
Yeah, it's a really interesting profile. I think the one, if we're going to look at a kind of pros and cons of Barrenechea versus Weston, in that, there's a lot more exposure to not just Premier League football, but top-level football generally for Weston McKennie. Barrenechea has been on loan, as you say, in Frosinone, who have been playing in Serie B in Italy. So he's kind of had this fantastic season for them, but he has been playing second-tier football. And so, there's something to caveat. I know that people, I'd say, have been pretty cold on Weston, but, that's something to definitely mention. I think, we're looking at 25 million euro plus Barrenechea plus Samuel Iling-Junior. And so it's one where it's slightly tweaked the kind of financials in the deal, but Barrenechea seems a lot keener to join, which, to be honest with you, kind of, in my opinion, makes the rest of it moot. You could be signing, some of the, Fede Valverde, but if he doesn't want to come, it's like, what's the point? And, it seems like from what reports are saying, and I think generally we can trust these sources because they're the same sources that have been saying that Weston's not happy with leaving Juventus, and all of this stuff. They're now saying Barrenechea is very keen to join Villa. He's very eager. And so, to be honest with you, even, before we go into the deeper dive on the player, for me, that makes this 10 times more appealing because, as you rightly say, swap deals are always notoriously difficult to execute, particularly when there's, not just 2, but 3 players involved. Thankfully, Samuel Iling-Junior seems to be in the same boat, although he is obviously English. He's previously at Chelsea's academy. So, it's slightly more understandable that a move back to England, back to the Premier League, is going to be more appealing for him. But when you look at that kind of extra piece, that extra midfielder that we're looking to get, just to have someone that's keen to come and get involved in the Villa project, that's seemingly, tempted by the opportunity to continue playing Champions League football as it would be available over the next few seasons with Juventus. It's really, really interesting. It looks like Douglas Luiz remained very key to join Juventus, totally understandable. But yeah, now with this new player involved, hopefully that greases the wheels and we can get this moving again, mate.
Absolutely. I think as well, Weston's obviously, Copa America's about to happen. He's going to be very busy. And now we're sort of going to be dealing with players and personal terms who aren't playing. They're in the off season. So I think, again, to more to your point, that just speeds things up. It makes things a lot easier. In possibly the most interesting twist of this whole transfer saga, though, mate, Alisha Lehmann seems to be involved in this deal. It's a double swap, or it's a buy one get one free, essentially. The first ever couples transfer, and it almost seems ridiculous when you say it out loud. And they've been getting so much heat for it, but why wouldn't you Douglas Luiz has allegedly suggested this, right? Why wouldn't you go, can you include my girlfriend in the deal? You're both going to do the same job, right? And I think my biggest criticism it's not even of the deal, but of Alisha Lehmann's time at Aston Villa at all, is she's clearly been signed for a reason, right? She has been signed for a reason. She is, by all accounts, a good footballer. She's not an excellent footballer. And it just feels like the club hasn't sort of capitalised on that sort of the marketing potential with Lehmann. as well as they could have done. And I'm being careful with how I word this because I can appreciate that this may come across in a very weird way. But she's got 15 million followers on Instagram. And I do not... And you're way more involved with Aston Villa women than I am, mate. So, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But in terms of marketing, in terms of profile, in terms of publicity, it doesn't feel like this has been what we can deem like a successful move. Lehmann coming to Villa, like she's not necessarily raised the profile of the women's team or of women's football specifically with Aston Villa. And maybe I'm being really cynical here, but it feels like it was like a massively missed opportunity.
No, I mean, I don't disagree with you, mate. I don't disagree with you. It's one where, even if we do kind of look at the pitch, she's never really kind of made herself a kind of mainstay out on the wing for Villa. You've had Kirsty Hansen playing there, Adriana Leon, who we signed this season, has kind of come in. There's been a lot of games where Alisha's been coming off the bench. She's been, even if she's been starting, she'll normally get pulled. There have been some really, really good moments for her, and it's not been a bad transfer by any means. Certainly on the pitch, off it, I think she's a difficult case in that, she probably, as you rightly say, mate, like one of the biggest names in women's football. I don't think that's crazy to say, but her profile well outweighs kind of. And she I don't want to make her out to be a bad player. Like, she's a very good player that's contributed to some big moments for this Villa team. But is one where, she brings around a horde of followers that I think we can all agree are aware of Alisha, probably for the wrong reasons. And so, unfortunately for her, you could potentially flip that and bring that to maybe a significant portion of our audience represent the side of women's football that actually might be holding back the women's game. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think whilst definitely, I imagine on social media numbers that have certainly picked up a lot over the last couple of years, and then those will slowly ebb away should this move to Juventus happen. But yeah, I mean, whether you're actually attracting the right kind of people, might be a different question altogether. The one thing to definitely state from this deal, though, mate, is although we'll be sending, it seems, Alisha Lehmann to Juventus, the financials on this deal probably won't have any impact on this for Villa really at all. The all-time world record for a transfer in the women's game, I think, is 860,000. And so, with Alisha probably not even going to get into scratch that, it will be a really, really nominal fee. So remains to be seen whether we'll try and do some kind of exchange in the women's side for a player, or whether it's just a straight up cash deal. But yeah, even though we're including another player in this deal, it probably won't benefit. Well, the thing is it'll probably have to happen. This is a good question to ask, actually, is how close can those two deals be? Because obviously the men and women, you imagine, are separate entities financially. We can't use... I know that the Premier League with FFP and the profit and sustainability rules tries not to take too much of what you do on the women's team into account. They tend to actually reward clubs for spending women on the infrastructure and their women's teams and trying to up-level the general quality there, and don't take that into account when they're considering their FFP kind of rules. But yeah, whether you can kind of use the two to cook the books, whether they're separate entities, I don't know. But yeah, it will set a crazy precedent, mate. It's definitely the first heterosexual couples transfer. I think, if you're in the women's game, this probably has been going under the radar for some time now. But yeah, definitely seen a guy to go play for the same club moving to the same club. I definitely don't think I've seen this before, mate.
No, absolutely. And it's great. It's great for them. You have to be you don't want either one of them to be unhappy with the move as well.
Totally.
So for them both to go, it's a great thing for them personally. And yeah, it's an interesting deal, especially when I think a lot of what the sort of the discourse around this deal, and maybe the fee that's involved specifically, in isolation in regard, not including the player swaps, that 25 mil. They're saying that Man City have a 20% sell-on fee, which that kind of seems standard. You see most players who sort of leave the sort of City Football Group will tend to have that. So it kind of makes sense as to why we would sort of entertain the swap deals rather than go, no, we want 60 million, because then 12 million of that straight away is going back to Man City. So it's a sort of it's frustrating that we have to sit here and be really knowledgeable, or attempt to be really knowledgeable about finances and accountancy. When did football become this boring, mate? When did this happen?
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy, and like, given that so much of the deals that we're seeing, be it the potential John Duran sale to Chelsea, and then we've looked at Ian Maatson or Conor Gallagher potentially coming away with Everton. There's Tim going one way, potentially Lewis Dobbin coming the other way. It's like it's a genuine. It's sad, isn't it? Really, because it's like with the Tim Lewis Dobbin deal, and there's probably a better podcast to kind of talk about this, and it kind of it's the same case with Juve and the Luiz deal that we are talking about. Like, is anybody truly benefiting from this deal? Like in the Luiz to Juve deal, who's the winner? And it kind of is the same in the Everton one, is that we're sending them for a very respectable fee. It looks like Lewis Dobbin's coming the other way. Is Lewis Dobbin going to make an impact on the Villa first team? Probably not. But he'll probably kind of be one of those players that sits on the fringes of our first and second team, as he has been doing. And so you're going to get these clubs more often than not moving around academy players to other clubs who are going to send them their academy players, and they're just kind of getting moved around like pawns. And I actually came on to the last episode where it was kind of under that banner of Villa were threatening legal action against the Premier League. I genuinely tried to make that podcast about the players, but I almost couldn't. It's like, what are we doing here? And if this kind of saga that we're seeing, I'm not too in tune with whether other clubs are doing this, but the way that Villa are seemingly tiptoeing around this PSR and FFP stuff is absolutely wild. And it just, whether we're going to see more of this over the years, you've got to do something and step in here, because otherwise you're just going to see these crazy deals where clubs are going to send one player, they're going to send back a player the other way, and then you're going to get two players that maybe don't really want to be there, as we saw with Weston. They've just been moved around so clubs can kind of cover the books. It's a crazy situation.
Yeah, it's not nice, really, is it? It's not. It doesn't feel like within the spirit of the game, which I think is important to sort of consider and contemplate. But until the rules change, if they change, I guess we're going to see more of this. And it's good to see that we're starting to form an alliance. It feels it's very much like The Office. We're going to form an alliance just to defeat FFP. But yeah, I guess we'll have to, we'll just have to see what happens there. And I imagine that this deal will sort of be closed within the next week or two. We've got the sort of the FFP deadline for the last cycle, or the current cycle, I guess, which is at the end of June, the 30th of June. So we're going to want money in the bank soon. So, hopefully this can get wrapped up and onto bigger and more exciting things where we can really splash the cash, mate, after June, in July. But yeah, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below on this deal, on this update of this deal. Do you guys think this is a better deal? I think we're inclined to say yes at the moment, aren't we, Dan?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the main thing is here, mate. I think we just need to get this done as soon as possible. It's better for the players, and it's better for us as fans, because I think we're just ready to put the band-aid off. It'll be really sad to say goodbye to Dougie, but the longer that this goes on, you kind of just get to a point where it's like, right, let's just rip the band-aid off. Let's get this done and let's move on. And so, I think for all parties, the sooner that we can wrap this up, the better.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So, guys, if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button so you never miss an upload here. Comment your thoughts below and like the video if you enjoyed. Up the Villa.